At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI slop. In the end, what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it this way. My name's General G. Let's begin. War had become inevitable the moment humanity walked away from the Galactic Council. Yet, as the human ambassador turned his back and left the chamber, the prevailing sentiment was that cursing the Trovac leaders and their ancestors had been humanity's gravest mistake. 3 days later, the largest fleet ever assembled set course for Earth, with the Trovac mocking human tactics, even as they approached the outer planets of the human home system. Admiral Gar stood at the center of the flagship's bridge, his imposing figure silhouetted against the viewport that displayed the distant blues and whites of Earth. His crimson uniform was pristine, the medals across his chest representing decades of military victories. He activated the fleet-wide communication channel, and his voice resonated through every ship in the Armada. "Attention, all vessels," Gar announced, his tone serious. "We are now entering the final phase of our approach. As discussed in our strategic briefings, the moment our bait ships decloak near Earth's atmosphere, we can count on these primitives launching their atomic arsenal. They still rely on fission-based weapons, technology we abandoned 6 centuries ago." He paused, allowing a slight smile to cross his face. "Once they've exhausted their nuclear stockpile against our disposable drones, we'll be free to conquer their planet without resistance. Their orbital defenses will be depleted, their military scattered, and their spirit broken." The bridge of the flagship erupted in laughter. The sound was unlike human mirth, more orcish, punctuated by the subtle bioluminescent rings that adorned each officer's horns. These rings gave off warm colors, amber, gold, and soft orange, visual indicators of their amusement and high spirits. The sight was almost beautiful, a display of evolutionary biology that conveyed emotion as clearly as any facial expression. Zad, the navigator, touched his red leathery face with one hand, while the other covered his large yellow eyes. His shoulders shook with suppressed laughter as he shook his head from side to side. When he finally composed himself enough to speak, his voice traveled across the bridge for everyone to hear. "I believe," Zad said between chuckles, "the humans will get so confused the moment they detect our bait ships that they'll attack themselves instead." The other officers burst into renewed laughter. "I've studied their history extensively, and humanity has always been particularly spooky since their Cold War period. They spent decades pointing weapons at their own species. Can you imagine? A species so paranoid they nearly destroyed themselves without any external threat." Key, the weapons officer, uncrossed her arms from where they'd been folded over her black uniform and leaned back in her chair. Her bioluminescent rings flickered from gold to a brighter yellow, indicating her transition from amusement to genuine delight at the thought. "It would be absolutely hilarious if those disrespectful humans destroyed themselves before we even fired a single shot," she said. She crossed her arms again, playfully settling into her station. "The Council wouldn't believe us if we were that lucky. We'd have to prove full sensor logs as evidence, and even then, some of the elder species would think we'd fabricated the data." The laughter continued for several more moments, filling the bridge with an atmosphere bordering on arrogance. Officers at various stations exchanged jokes. The mood was celebratory, as if they'd already won the war before firing a single shot. But Admiral Gar raised one hand, and the laughter gradually subsided. His bioluminescent rings shifted from warm amber to a cooler blue, a color associated with seriousness and focus in Trovac culture. He began pacing around the bridge, his boots making firm sounds against the deck plating. Every officer's attention snapped to him, though Gar could still see the warm colors lingering in their horns. proving that while the loud laughter had died down, the playful mood still persisted. "That's enough," Gar said firmly, though not harshly. "Yes, the humans are proud primitives who think themselves too good for the Council's guidance. Yes, their military capabilities are centuries behind our own. But we need to take this seriously now that we're just minutes away from engagement range." He stopped pacing and turned to face his crew directly. "Overconfidence has destroyed more military campaigns than superior enemy technology ever has. We've all read the tactical histories. Pride comes before the fall, as even the humans say in their ancient texts." "Understood, Admiral," came the chorus of responses. Officers straightened at their stations, and Gar watched as their bioluminescent rings gradually shifted toward cooler, more professional colors, blues and greens that indicated focus and readiness. Yet he could still detect the occasional flicker of warm amber, brief flashes that revealed the underlying confidence his crew felt. The loud laughter had been silenced, but the fundamental belief in their superiority remained. Perhaps that was acceptable, Gar thought. Confidence was essential in warfare, after all. It was only overconfidence that proved fatal. The minutes passed quickly. Status reports filtered in from across the fleet, each captain confirming their position and readiness. The armada was magnificent, 137 warships, representing the combined military might of the Trovac hegemony and 3 allied species. Each vessel was impressive with plasma cannons capable of glassing a planet's surface, shielding technology that could withstand direct hits from stellar radiation, and stealth systems that bent light and electromagnetic radiation around their hulls like water flowing around a stone. "Admiral," reported Zad from his navigation console, "the entire fleet has achieved optimal positioning. We're holding station at approximately 380,000 kilometers from the Earth's surface, roughly equivalent to the distance between their planet and their natural satellite." Gar nodded approvingly. The moon provided excellent cover, and the distance was perfect for their strategy. Close enough to strike decisively once the humans revealed their defenses, yet far enough to remain undetected by their primitive sensor technology. "Excellent work, Navigator. Compile the final positioning data and transmit it to all vessels." He moved to the center of the bridge and activated the fleet-wide communication channel once more. This time his tone was all business, with no trace of the earlier humor. "All ships, this is Admiral Gar with final mission parameters. Maintain current positions and prepare for Operation Trojan Vanguard. Captains of 60 through 70, confirm your remote control links with the designated disposable drone vessels." The response came quickly, each captain's voice crisp and professional. "Ship 62, drone link confirmed and encrypted. Ship 65, remote systems synchronized. Ship 67, command link active and verified." One by one, the confirmations rolled in until all 11 drone operators had reported their readiness. These disposable ships were little more than automated hulls with basic propulsion and shielding, designed to draw fire and gather intelligence. They would decloak near Earth's atmosphere, presenting tempting targets that would force the humans to reveal their defensive positions and exhaust their weapons against decoys. "Perfect," Gar said. "Here's how this will proceed. On my mark, the assigned captains will take remote control of the disposable drone ships and initiate their decloak sequences close to Earth's atmosphere. The humans will detect these vessels immediately. Their radar technology, while primitive, is sufficient for that. They'll scramble their orbital defense platforms and launch their interceptor craft." He paused, letting the mental image form in every officer's mind. "When the humans waste their resources engaging our drones and summon their own fleet to respond to what they believe is our main attack force, we will decloak and strike. Does everyone understand their role?" The responses came immediately, and Gar noted the varying motivations in each captain's voice. Captain Nex of Ship 43 said, "Your tactical thinking keeps us safe, Admiral. It's why we trust your command." Captain Vorish of Ship 91 added, "Bold, yet calculated. This is why the Council chose you to lead us." That was respect, the kind earned through successful campaigns. But then, Captain Ulix of Ship 104 chimed in with, "Truly inspired strategy, Admiral. No other commander could have conceived such a brilliant plan. Your genius will be remembered for generations." Gar's bioluminescent rings flickered with irritation. That was pure flattery, the kind of sycophantic response he'd heard too many times from officers, more interested in political advancement than actual military competence. Gar immediately cut off any further such responses, before they could contaminate the communication channel. "Save the praise for after the victory," he said sharply. "All ships, begin operation now. Captains controlling the drone vessels, initiate decloak sequences in 30 seconds. All other vessels, maintain stealth integrity, and prepare for combat deployment. Execute!" The bridge came to life as his crew carried out their assigned tasks. Gar watched the main tactical display, not a holographic projection like some of the more advanced species used, but a large flat screen that showed a comprehensive overview of the battlefield. The technology was proven reliable and less susceptible to failure than the fancier alternatives. Green icons represented their fleet, still invisible to human sensors. The 11 red icons indicating the drone ships began moving toward Earth, accelerating to engagement speed. The seconds ticked down. Gar found himself holding his breath, a physiological response he'd never quite eliminated despite decades of command experience. This was always the moment of truth in any operation, the transition from planning to execution, where theoretical strategies met the chaos of reality. "Drone vessels approaching optimal decloak position," reported the tactical officer. "Distance to Earth's atmosphere, 2,000 kilometers. Initiation in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Decloak signal sent." On the tactical display, the 11 red icons suddenly brightened, indicating they were now visible to both human sensors and the fleet's own instruments. Everything was proceeding exactly according to plan. The drones were where they needed to be, moving on predictable vectors that would draw the human response. "All ships reporting successful drone decloak," the communications officer confirmed. "We're monitoring Earth's surface for their response." Gar nodded, his eyes fixed on the display. Now came the waiting period. Human military response times, based on intelligence gathered over years of observation, suggested they would need approximately 45 seconds to confirm the contacts, another 30 seconds to scramble their defensive platforms, and perhaps 2 minutes to begin launching their nuclear-tipped interceptors. The entire human response would unfold over approximately 4 minutes, during which the drones would continue their approach, drawing fire and... "Admiral!" The sensor officer's voice hinted a note of alarm that instantly focused every eye on the bridge. "We're detecting... Sir, Ship 14 just... it's gone." "Define gone," Gar snapped, moving to the sensor station in 3 long strides. The officer's hands trembled as he worked the controls, pulling up the data. "Sir, Ship 14 was maintaining position at our fleet's forward perimeter. Approximately 8 seconds after the drone decloak sequence, it simply... there was an energy spike, then nothing. Sensors show a rapidly expanding debris field where the ship used to be. It's been completely destroyed." The bridge erupted into chaos. Officers shouted over one another, demanding explanations, verifying sensor data, checking their own systems for malfunctions. "How is that possible?" He demanded from her weapons station. "Our ship was still cloaked. The humans couldn't have detected it." "Reactor failure?" suggested another officer. "Those plasma cores can be unstable if the containment fields develop microscopic..." "Negative," interrupted the chief engineer, who'd been monitoring the fleet's status remotely. Ship 14 transmitted diagnostic data continuously until the moment of destruction. All systems were functioning within normal parameters. This wasn't an internal malfunction. Gar's mind raced through possibilities. A coincidence? Ship 14 suffering a catastrophic failure at the exact moment the drones decloaked? The statistical probability was infinitesimal. But the alternative, that somehow the humans had detected and destroyed a fully cloaked vessel using technology that by all intelligence reports was centuries behind Trovac capabilities, that seemed equally impossible. "Maintain positions," Gar ordered, his voice cutting through the confused chatter. "All ships verify stealth system integrity. Sensor teams, I want continuous monitoring of—" "Admiral!" The tactical officer's voice carried pure disbelief. "Sir, I'm reading thousands of contacts, thousands of small, fast-moving objects already in space targeting our positions." Gar whirled to face the main tactical display, and his breath caught. The screen had been clear just seconds ago, showing only their fleet, their own drones and Earth itself. Now it was filled with red icons, a swarm of tiny contacts approaching the fleet. "Where did they come from?" Zad demanded, his yellow eyes wide with shock. "How did we miss them? Were they hidden behind their moon?" "Negative," the sensor officer replied, frantically checking and rechecking the data. "They were already in space, and we missed them. I think these are unmanned vehicles, drones of some kind, but the signatures don't match anything in our intelligence databases." The communications officer suddenly jumped in, his voice rising with urgency. "Admiral, we're receiving multiple requests from our fleet. They're demanding that you authorize a full fleet decloak so they can raise their defensive shields. With this many unknown contacts, they feel vulnerable maintaining stealth." Gar's mind worked rapidly, analyzing the situation from every angle. The unknown swarm was spreading through the space between Earth and their fleet position. His ships were still invisible, still protected by their cloaking technology. But Ship 14 was gone, destroyed by something, and now these thousands of contacts presented an unknown threat. If he maintained stealth, his ships couldn't raise their shields. The energy would compromise their cloaking, but if they decloaked, they'd lose the element of surprise that was supposed to be their primary advantage. What would the humans expect him to do? They'd sent this swarm, assuming it was even hostile and not some kind of defensive chaff, and they'd be anticipating his response. If he stayed hidden, he couldn't defend against whatever had killed Ship 14. If he revealed his position, he'd be fighting the battle on human terms instead of his own. But what choice did he have? He couldn't sacrifice his fleet to maintain a tactical advantage that might already be compromised. "All ships!" Gar announced through the fleet-wide channel, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his thoughts. "You are authorized to decloak immediately. Raise shields to maximum capacity and prepare for defensive operations. Maintain formation discipline and await further orders." The relief in the responding acknowledgments was clear and obvious. Within seconds, the main tactical display showed their entire fleet, 136 green icons suddenly visible, their stealth fields collapsing as powerful defensive shields sprang into place around each vessel. Several captains immediately reported through the channel. "Admiral, we're ready for combat. If the humans want a fair fight, we'll show them why the Council's technology is superior." "Agreed," another captain added. "Our shields can withstand anything they can throw at us. We have the technological advantage." Gar nodded absently, acknowledging their statements, but his attention remained fixed on the tactical display. The swarm of human drones, if that's what they were, continued their approach. They were moving fast, but not impossibly so. Intercepting them would be trivial for his ship's point defense systems. Each of his vessels carried automated turrets that could track and destroy hundreds of small targets per minute. "Weapons!" Gar ordered. "Prepare point defense systems for anti-drone operations. Let's clear these pests from our—" The swarm hit them. Thousands of individual contacts converged on the fleet simultaneously, small explosions blossoming across the tactical display, like flowers blooming in accelerated time. The bridge shook a little, not from any damage to their flagship, which was positioned toward the rear of the formation, but from the sheer volume of impacts happening across the fleet. "Damage reports," Gar demanded. "Minimal, sir," the tactical officer replied after a moment of checking incoming data. "The drones are impacting our shields but causing negligible damage. They appear to be simple kinetic weapons, just mass and velocity. Our shields are handling them easily. Current shield strength across the fleet averaging 96%. A collective sigh of relief swept through the bridge. Officers exchanged glances, their bioluminescent rings shifting back toward warmer colors. The tension that had gripped them moments before began to ease. But Gar felt no such relief. His eyes remained locked on the tactical display, watching the patterns. Yes, the drones themselves had caused minimal damage, but now, between his fleet and Earth, there was something else. The screen showed it clearly. A vast field of debris. Thousands upon thousands of fragments from the destroyed drones, spreading outward in expanding clouds, filling the space around and between his ships. The debris was everywhere, creating a three-dimensional fog of metal and composite materials, and the density was increasing as more drones arrived and were destroyed by point defense fire. His sensor officers and their equipment were having to work much harder now, filtering out the debris signatures to identify actual threats. It was noise, deliberate, carefully calculated noise designed to blind their sensors. "All ships!" Gar said sharply, his instincts screaming warnings his conscious mind was still piecing together. "Prepare for immediate fleet relocation. We need to move away from this debris field before—" The second wave of explosions ripped through a cluster of ships on the fleet's forward right flank. This time, the bridge shook so violently, alarms blared as 6 ship icons turned from green to amber on the tactical display, indicating critical damage. One flickered and went dark entirely, winking out of existence as the vessel was destroyed. "What happened?" Gar roared over the chaos of shouted reports and alarm klaxons. "What hit them?" "Unknown weapons fire," the sensor officer shouted back. "I can't get a clear reading through all this debris. The impacts were concentrated, multiple simultaneous strikes from different vectors. It's like they knew exactly where to aim despite our evasive positioning." The tactical display had become a nightmare. The organized formation that had represented the largest military fleet ever assembled was dissolving into chaos. Some captains, acting on their own initiative without waiting for orders, began firing their weapons at targets Gar couldn't even identify through the obscuring debris cloud. Others attempted to retreat, their ships accelerating away from the kill zone. But there was no clear direction to retreat toward. The debris field surrounded them. Gar stood frozen at the center of his bridge, surrounded by his crew as they frantically worked at their stations, trying to understand what was happening. The communications officer was handling dozens of incoming transmissions simultaneously. The sensor officer was recalibrating systems repeatedly, attempting to cut through the interface. The weapons officer was trying to coordinate defensive fire with the rest of the fleet, but without clear targeting data, it was like shooting blind. "Admiral!" the captain's voice came through on the main channel, raw with fear. "Ship 38 reporting shields at 60% and falling. We're under sustained fire, but we can't identify the source. Request permission to—" The transmission cut off as Ship 38's icon turned amber, then flickered to black. More reports flooded in, each one more desperate than the last. "Ship 71, shields at 50%. Ship 99, multiple hull breaches, evacuating sections 4 and 5. Ship 106, weapons offline, maneuvering capabilities compromised." Gar watched the time at the corner of the tactical display. 5 minutes. 5 minutes since the operation had begun. How had everything gone so wrong so quickly? "Admiral!" the sensor officer called out, hope mixing with confusion in their voice. "I'm getting faint signatures. There are ships out there. Human ships. They're attacking us with—" "Sir, the weapons profile matches railguns, missiles, and drones all simultaneously. They're layering different types of attacks." But the information came too late to be useful. The human ships remained frustratingly difficult to detect through the debris and the chaos of the battle. Gar could see them now, ghostly traces on the sensors, but not clearly enough to target effectively. They were there and not there, visible for moments before disappearing back into the sensor noise. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessels," Gar ordered. But even as he spoke, he knew it was futile. His captains couldn't effectively target what they could barely detect. The clock continued its relentless advance. 5 minutes and 30 seconds. 6 minutes. "Admiral, shield failure on Ship 21. Ship 47 is gone. Ship 65 requesting immediate assistance. There." Another icon went dark. The tactical officer's voice cracked as he delivered the report. "We have 20 ships remaining, and most of those are heavily damaged." 20. The number hit Gar like a punch in the stomach. In 6 minutes, the largest fleet ever assembled for interstellar flight, reduced to scattered, crippled survivors. Ship icons that had represented thousands of lives and centuries of technological achievement now appeared as nothing more than spreading debris fields on his tactical display. This wasn't a battle, it was a massacre. Gar's mind raced, searching desperately for a solution, some tactical maneuver that could salvage this disaster. But there was nothing. They'd walked into a trap so perfect, so thoroughly planned, that resistance was meaningless. The humans had known, somehow known, where to position their own fleet, how to blind his sensors, and precisely where to strike for maximum effect. Pride over confidence. He'd warned his crew about it just minutes ago, yet he'd been guilty of it himself. They'd all been so certain of their superiority that they never considered the possibility of human tactics actually working. Prison was preferable to death. The thought crystallized in Gar's mind with absolute clarity. His duty now wasn't to win an unwinnable battle. It was to preserve what remained of his fleet and the lives under his command. He moved across the bridge in 3 swift strides, pushing past the communications officer without asking permission, and seized control of the main communications array. His fingers worked the controls with the muscle memory of decades of experience, opening a channel on every frequency, military, civilian, even the old emergency bands that nobody used anymore. "Attention, human forces!" Gar's voice rang out across the void, broadcast to Earth and every remaining ship in both fleets. "This is Admiral Gar of the Trovac hegemony fleet. I am broadcasting our unconditional surrender on all frequencies. We surrender. Prison is preferable to death. We are ceasing all offensive operations immediately and request terms of capitulation." The bridge fell silent. Every officer stopped what they were doing and turned to stare at him. The look in their eyes was complex. Shock, relief, shame, and understanding all mixed together. Seconds crawled by, 10, 20, 30. Each second felt like an eternity, and Gar found himself wondering if the humans would even accept surrender or if they would simply finish what they'd started. Would Earth exact revenge for the presumption that this fleet had represented, eliminating every ship that dared approach their world? Then, abruptly, the explosion stopped. The silence that followed was somehow louder than the chaos of battle had been. No more impacts, no more alarms, just the quiet of space. The main view screen shifted, displaying the face of a human. The being was younger than Gar had expected, with dark hair and sharp eyes. He wore a military uniform that Gar didn't recognize, dark blue with silver insignia. "Admiral Gar," the human said, his voice calm and professional. "I am Commander Wade of the Earth Defense Force. On behalf of humanity, I accept your surrender. All vessels under your command will immediately lower their weapon systems and deactivate their defensive shields. Failure to comply will result in the resumption of hostilities. Do you understand these terms?" Doubt rippled through the remaining captain's communications. Gar could hear them on the fleet channel, questioning whether they should trust the humans, whether lowering shields was truly safe or just another trap that would make them even more vulnerable. "All ships," Gar said firmly, cutting through their doubts with command authority. "You will obey Commander Wade's instructions immediately. Lower weapons and deactivate shields. That is a direct order." He looked directly at the human on the screen, meeting those strange eyes that had evolved so differently from his own. "Commander, we will comply." He watched the tactical display as, one by one, the surviving icons, representing his once mighty fleet, went from combat-ready status to defenseless. The shields that had protected them, however inadequately, collapsed. The weapons that could have glassed a planet powered down to standby. And then, finally seeing it clearly without the chaos of battle obscuring his sensors, Gar observed what he'd been fighting. The human ships emerged from the debris cloud like predators stepping from shadows. Their stealth technology was laughably primitive compared to Trovac cloaking fields. Even now, with his sensors operating normally, he could detect them easily. The signature dampening was tentative at best, something his equipment cut through without difficulty. Yet they'd won. These primitive vessels, with their inferior stealth, had detected his fleet when his own advanced cloaking should have made that impossible, had positioned themselves perfectly, and had destroyed his forces. How? The question burned in Gar's mind, overwhelming even the shame of defeat. He needed to understand. His entire career, his understanding of warfare, his certainty about the galaxy's technological hierarchy, all of it had been shattered in 6 minutes. Before his fate was decided, before whatever came next, he had to know. "Commander Wade," Gar said, his voice hinting desperate curiosity that he didn't bother to hide. "I must know, how did you detect us? Our cloaking technology is centuries beyond your sensor capabilities. We had every technological advantage. How did you win?" The human commander's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. A glint of satisfaction, perhaps, or vindication. He didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched as the remaining Trovac ships completed their compliance with the surrender terms. Finally, once every single vessel had confirmed their weapons were down and shields were offline, Wade spoke. "Admiral, humanity knew that war was inevitable from the moment we walked away from the Galactic Council. We're not naive. We understood that cursing your leaders and the ancestors would have consequences, so we prepared." Wade's tone was matter-of-fact, as if he were discussing weather patterns rather than the complete destruction of an invasion fleet. "We made a plan to defend Earth." "But how?" Gar pressed. "Your technology—" "You're asking the wrong question," Wade interrupted. "You're focused on our technology compared to yours. That's the mistake everyone makes about humans. We don't need to out-tech our opponents. We need to out-think them." Gar felt his frustration rising but forced himself to remain silent, to listen. "Gravitational detectors," Wade explained. "We placed them throughout the solar system, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Each one is individually inaccurate, yes. Your cloaking fields do an excellent job of hiding electromagnetic signatures, energy transmissions, even heat signatures. Very impressive technology. But you can't hide mass. You can't make gravity invisible." The realization hit Gar like a physical impact. Of course, the fundamental forces of physics couldn't be fooled by cloaking fields. No matter how well a ship hid its emissions, it still had mass, and mass created gravitational effects. "None of our individual detectors could pinpoint your fleet," Wade continued, "but together, analyzing the collective data, we could tell that Earth was under attack. We knew you were out there, somewhere in this general region of space. We knew roughly what direction you were coming from and approximately how far away you were." "But that's not precise enough for targeting," Gar protested. "You couldn't have—" "No, we couldn't," Wade agreed. "That's where the first wave came in. Those thousands of drones you destroyed, they weren't meant to hurt you. They were meant to find you. Each one was a sensor platform. When they got close enough to your ships, even your cloaking couldn't completely hide the gravitational distortions at close range. The drones triangulated your exact positions and transmitted that data back to us. It was brilliant. Gar felt a sick admiration for the simple elegance of the strategy. Use crude but effective physics to determine rough positioning, then use expendable assets to refine that data to targeting quality. The Trovac would never have considered such a primitive approach. They would have focused on developing better sensors, more sophisticated technology. The humans had instead accepted their technological limitations and worked within them. "The debris field," Gar said quietly, understanding flooding through him. "You needed us blind." "Exactly," Wade confirmed. "Once we knew where you were, we needed to make sure you couldn't effectively target our ships while we engaged you. The destroyed drones created an enormous debris field that played havoc with your sensors. You could detect the debris, but sorting through it to find our ships among all those thousands of fragments? That takes time. Time you didn't have." "And the concentrated explosions that followed," Gar continued, seeing it all clearly now, "were meant to destroy us before we could adapt." "Overwhelming firepower delivered at precisely the right moment," Wade said with a slight nod. "We knew you'd decloak once you felt threatened. We knew you'd raise shields. We had detailed intelligence on your fleet composition and capabilities. You've been demonstrating your technology to council members for centuries. We knew how much damage your shields could withstand, so we calculated exactly how much firepower we needed to deliver and how quickly to overcome your defenses before you could respond effectively." "Intelligence, overwhelming firepower, and deception," Gar said softly, almost to himself. "Basic human tactics." "Basic human tactics," Wade repeated. And now there was definitely satisfaction in his voice. "Combined with good planning and the advantage of fighting on our home ground." He paused, letting that sink in. "It took 6 minutes. 6 minutes from the start of the engagement to your surrender." 6 minutes. Gar stared at the technical display, at the 20 green icons that represented all that remained of his proud fleet. 6 minutes to go from inevitable victory to total defeat. "What happens now?" Gar asked, his voice hollow. "What will become of my fleet?" Commander Wade's expression became more formal, more official. "Your ships will be seized and disassembled. We'll study them, learn from them. Your crews will be imprisoned, and their eventual freedom will be negotiated with the Galactic Council, assuming the Council values them enough to bargain for their return." He looked directly at Gar. "As for you, Admiral, you will become a political prisoner. Your fate will depend on how much the Council values you personally and what they're willing to offer in exchange for your release." Gar felt the weight of those words settle onto his shoulders like a star. Political prisoner. His future, whether he would spend years in confinement, whether he would ever see his home world again, whether he would face trial or simply be forgotten. All of it now depended on political calculations made by beings who might decide he was worth less than whatever Earth demanded in return. He'd mocked Earth's tactics. He'd led the largest fleet ever assembled into battle against a supposedly primitive species, and he'd lost in 6 minutes. Now his fate was uncertain, hanging in a balance he couldn't influence, determined by forces beyond his control. The great Admiral Gar, victor of 36 military campaigns, reduced to a bargaining chip in political negotiations. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so bitter. On the view screen, Commander Wade's image remained steady, waiting for acknowledgement. Around the bridge, Gar's crew sat at their stations in stunned silence, their bioluminescent rings glowing with faint and sad colors. "We understand," Gar finally said, his voice quiet but clear. "We will cooperate with the terms of our surrender." As the communication ended and the screen went dark, Gar turned to face his crew. They looked to him for guidance, for some word that would make sense of what had happened, that would provide meaning to their defeat. But Gar had nothing to offer them. No wisdom, no comfort, no explanation that would ease the magnitude of their failure. He had mocked Earth's tactics, and Earth had won in 6 minutes. Everything else was just consequences.